going to bring in the man himself, former WWE and NXT announcer, also play-by-play announcer for Russell Circus, has his own website, as we mentioned, which is rbvotv.com. He's a big hockey fan. He's a big political fan. Loves a whole bunch of things. We'll be talking about a whole bunch of things and more. None other than the man himself, Rich Bocchini. Welcome, brother.
Hey, what's up, man? You really did your research. That's impressive.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. Always, all professionals here. Did we say your last name right? Is it Bocchini or Bocchini?
Close enough, but Bocchini is. But yeah, I don't know that anybody's ever gotten my name right, or even close to it on the first try. So there's another point for you.
Okay, all right. Well, of course, my shoot's the last name. A lot of people tend to mess up. It's not a common one, so it's all fine. Otherwise known as Rich Brennan. I know a lot of people's like, who's that? Like, it's Rich Brennan from WWE. Oh, that's who he is. So, yes, we have you live. Welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
I'm good. You?
Oh, we good. I feel good. My staff on live feels good. One of our staff members is a little under the weather, but, of course, she's still here pressing on, being the tough lady that she is.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I was just, down here in Orlando enjoying the weather and waiting for it to get hot, I suppose.
But it's funny, you mentioned Orlando. As we mentioned, we was in Orlando last weekend doing business at WrestleCon, at WrestleMania. Were you in attendance at WrestleMania, at WrestleCon, or all the other events that happened?
I definitely didn't go to Mania, but I went to. I was at WrestleCon on Thursday for a little bit. So I was over there. I saw part of the Pro Wrestling Revival. Well, wait a minute. What show was Thursday? Whatever show was Thursday at 4 o'clock. It's all kind of a blur right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was over there. I was over there Thursday for a little bit. Saw some people. Or maybe that was Friday. No, that's right. And it's so like, you know what it was like here. It was crazy, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is crazy. So many shows, so many people. Friends in the business. This show, that show. Yeah, it runs together. We're sorry we missed you. We didn't touch down in Florida until Friday. So, but a lot of people was there. Some people we know was there since Monday.
Yeah, there was stuff going on. Some of the smaller indies around the area were doing shows all week. So my week started, it was actually Thursday. I'm getting this straight now. So I went to Evolve and I saw, I stuck around for a little bit of Joey Janela's Spring Break, which was a lot of fun. So I was there for that, and then Friday I was at WrestleCon, saw the show at 4 o'clock, which I think was Pro Wrestling Revolver. I'm sorry, it was Revolution Pro from the UK, my bad. So I saw some of that, and then so it was Friday, Saturday, kind of zipped around over at WrestleCon for a bit. I got to see some friends and people I haven't seen in a while. I ended up having lunch with Booker T. I haven't seen him in probably almost a year, so hung out with him for a bit, and then just kind of ran around a little bit. Kind of came home and relaxed because going into Saturday, I was pretty busy all day. I actually coach a little league team here in Orlando, so I had a game, and then I went to WrestleCon. And ended up going by the Beyond show later that night. And then met up with some people before the Beyond show. Some of the NXT people coming over from that show, from the Takeover show, over to a restaurant over here with some friends. And then Sunday, so I know that was the big day for everybody who was here for that part of it. But I ended up doing the Midnight After Mania show. So that was pretty much my week. It was kind of a blur.
Yeah, I'm definitely sure. It was. We had a long schedule too. It seems like a lot of things came together. Now, before we get into other things, now we did see on your website you put Russell Circus. I do know Russell Circus had events, I believe, after Mania, midnight after Mania. I know me and one of my other business partners, Chris Featherstone, of Pancakes and Power Slams, we were supposed to go to that event. Our good friend John Morrison, but it was just crazy. WrestleMania Mania was over 5.5 hours, and then the pre-show was 2 hours, and so by the time we even got to the hotel room, we were done. So we didn't even show up. Did you work that card?
I did, yeah. That's the show that I did. It was Wrestle Circus, a Pro Wrestling Revolver. I got over there probably, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they actually had the show on in the main theater portion of Plaza Live, the building that we were at. So I watched a couple minutes of that. Mostly when I heard Undertaker's music, I watched his entrance and then kind of saw the end of the match. The whole thing with him putting down the hat and the jacket and all that. But yeah, I was just kind of busy going over the show that night because there were a lot of guys on the show that I had heard of but not necessarily seen. So I was just trying to get some notes and kind of get to know who some people were. But that was a lot of fun. And for as tired as everybody was, from the performers to the crowd was hot pretty much most of the night. We didn't start till 1:25, I think, is when we actually went live on our pay-per-view. And then we were there till probably like 3:30. It was a full house. People were into it. There was a lot of energy in the building, especially considering the fact, like you said, not only the end of the week and all the shows that kind of blurred together, but if you went to Mania, to be there at, I'd imagine you'd probably have to leave your hotel probably 2 o'clock, depending on where you are, just to drive there and park and then get in there for, what did it start, 5 o'clock for the pre-show or whatever that was? And then to be in there till midnight, that's insane.
Yeah, we had a rental car, so what we did, and the fans, we were talking about Orlando, and I know we're getting a lot of DMs with questions from fans and Orlando stories too. We had a rental car, and what we did, we parked at the Gecko. It was a Gecko parking lot. It was like $10 to park, and we caught the shuttle. And we caught the shuttle to the arena, and then once we got to the arena, and surprisingly, it was better than Dallas because we was in Dallas last year. Good gosh, getting into the arena, and our seats was flawless. Of course, we took time. We got merchandise and we talked to a lot of fans and talked to some other partners, but getting in the stadium and getting to the seats was pretty easy. It was a lot better than Dallas last year. So, but yeah, like you said, we got there. It was about 5 o'clock, and we sat down, and it was Mania. Mania didn't enter after midnight, and then getting to the car, trying to get out of the traffic, to get to your hotel room, to your next destination. I know it took us a good 2.5, 3 hours just to wait to get something to eat. So we waited about a whole Monday Night Raw trying to get food, and we ended up getting food from Wendy's because Burger King and everywhere else was.
I was kind of curious, like, what area did you guys stay in? Were you downtown or closer to Disney or more and more?
We were at the Quality Inn and Suites in Orlando, so we were 5 minutes away from the Orlando Universal Studios entrance. So we was right down there. And a beautiful area. I love Florida. Florida's great. People were great. So we don't want to bore any of.
Sorry. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just letting the fans know, just, with Orlando, if you've been there, just the experience of being down there. The people were great. The weather was great. So.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I was kind of curious where you were to see how bad. So I was curious what it was going to be like on Sunday with the traffic getting in there and everything. But it sounds like they had that worked out pretty well then, huh?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, because most of the time we didn't leave right away. So just us, of course, going to a lot of wrestling events over the years. We've all been fans since the 80s. One of us said members since the 70s. So you never leave right away. We just tend to kind of linger and wait. And by the time we left, it took us long enough to go to the rental car. Once we got to the rental car and got to get out, it was pretty much easy. It was a little backup on the interstate. But like I said, the longest wait was waiting to get food. But Dallas last year was in Dallas. That was about 2 to 3 hour wait for cars. It was bumper to bumper. You wasn't going anywhere. So it was crazy. So. To you, Rich, question. Our fans been hitting us up, inboxing us. We wanted to ask first your name. Known as Rich Brennan in WWE, of course, it's not your shoot name. how did the name change go about? Is that something since working in WWE, you're part of the property with them? Did you have any input in that name, or that was just something that they gave you?
I pretty much right when I got hired, they told me to come up with a name. I had a list of I don't know, probably 10 names or so, and they actually, somebody within the company actually gave me a list, and I actually hated every name on the list that they gave me. I had an idea that I wanted to use. They wanted me to keep my first name just because it makes it easier with email addresses, and then just within the company as well, because sometimes people in the front office may know you by your shoot name, and they call you that instead of your work. It gets kind of confusing. So, and just for on-air purposes, for whatever reason, they wanted me to keep my first name. But the name Brennan is basically an easier way to say Breton, or if you say it in French, like Breton, Breton. That's my grandmother's maiden name. And when I did, for instance, when I did reality wrestling with Booker, I used a phony name. I used Anthony Pratt. Anthony is my middle name. Pratt is my mom's family, as my mom's maiden name.
Okay.
But I wanted a name that meant something. I didn't want just some goofy WWE name generator TV guy name. So Brennan was basically an easier way of saying Breton for anybody that wonders. It was actually Michael Cole who said, well, if you're going to be Breton, be Brennan. It's easier. So, okay, it's fine. So that's where that came from.
Okay. Did you, and I like the idea you had of the name change kind of goes to your shoot name, has something to do, some value that would be easier for you to kind of react to it or respond to it, instead of that, like you said,
exactly,
random generated WWE lottery type battle bowl type name.
It seems like recently there were a handful of people that they hired to be, whether it be backstage interviewers or whatever, they were able to keep their name when they came in. I know they've hired a few other people since then, and it looks like they've had them change their name. So I suppose I think what it really comes down to is if you have some kind of name recognition outside the company, you can probably keep your name. Where if you're just a guy from the indies, basically, which is what I was, they make you change your name, because really when you're on their television, you're a character.
Right.
You're not really in. And this is where it gets kind of weird. You're playing the role of an announcer, right? And that's how they phrase it, playing the role of an announcer. But you actually are an announcer, without a script, without anything like that. So it's kind of a weird way that they word the position and the way that the position is set up, because you're technically an actor playing the role of an announcer, if that makes sense.
It does. It definitely does make sense. It does. With you being an announcer, what got you into wanting to be an announcer? Is that something that you always wanted to do, being play-by-play, being an announcer, being a commentator, or was that something that you ended up growing into?
When I was a little kid, I used to have the LJN set with the elastic ropes.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
So, I hated them ropes. Yeah.
Well, they always after so long, they just started sagging. You had to kind of tie them in or not, and whatever. But I used to play with that all the time. I had the wrestlers and the ring and all that stuff, and I used to set up my own cards. I actually used to write out, like if you used to go to shows back in the 80s and probably into the early 90s, when you bought the program, it had the card in it and had the logo on the top, and it listed each match, where the guy was from, what he weighed, that type of thing. So I'd make up my own card like that, draw a little program for or whatever, and then I'd announce the guys coming to the ring and kind of do the play-by-play as I was messing around with them. So there was that. I guess I'd always been fascinated in radio and TV and that type of stuff. Really radio, I guess. I remember when I was a little kid, I had 2 record players and a tape deck, and I had this little microphone. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, trying to figure out how the DJs went from song to song and then talked over them and trying to get the timing down and all that stuff. it probably sounds really nerdy, but that's that's what I was interested in. When I got into college, I did college radio. I did a late night metal and indie rock and hardcore show, and punk rock show, that type of stuff. I did that for a couple of years, and somewhere along the way, I just kind of got an itch or an idea to be a hockey play-by-play guy, and that's really where all this stuff started. So yeah, it was just weird. I remember even thinking as a kid, listening to like Tony Schiavone and Vince.
Oh yeah,
and being being interested in Gorilla Monsoon and just being interested in what those guys did, and it always kind of fascinated me. I never thought that I would actually do wrestling play-by-play or wrestling announcing, because it seems like such a far-fetched thing to get into. It's almost like I'm going to star in a movie. Like, you never really think you're going to do that. So I got involved once I did the college radio thing, and from there I got involved in pro hockey. I played as a kid. I'm a big hockey fan, and I just kind of wanted a way. Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to find a way to stay involved in the game, because I knew I was never going to play pro. I was a terrible goaltender, so that was kind of my way of staying involved, and it seemed like a really cool thing. I used to watch the Bruins games, the Boston Bruins, on TV. They had an announcer named Fred Cusick, who was another real big influence of mine, and things just kind of went from there. I worked for a bunch of different teams in a bunch of different cities. I ended up moving to Houston to be the PR guy for the hockey team there. I wasn't doing radio at that point for them, but doing the media relations stuff and spokesman and that type of thing. And I also got involved doing sports radio, doing sports updates for the CBS radio affiliate there. And one thing led to another. I ended up becoming a ring announcer for NWA Houston, because I knew the guy that ran NWA Houston. Chris is his name. He doesn't run the company anymore, but it turns out that I knew him, and long story short, I ended up ring announcing for him. Then I ended up getting an opportunity to go work with Booker at his promotion, and I did that and ended up in WWE from there. So it was like riding a rocket ship, because it happened really fast, and it ended really fast too, in some regards. But it was just a really interesting ride, and it wasn't one that I ever really thought that I'd get to do. But I'm very thankful that I did.
Wow. I mean, like you said, it's maybe even though you weren't with, granted WWE, the fact that you made it there, or you got to work with Booker T, with Reality of Wrestling, working for the NWA, that still opens up doors. So regardless of, if a fire starts, wherever, if it burns 15 minutes or 15 hours, still is evidence. The fire was there. You made a mark. However long you stayed, at least you made it there. There's something you can say, and there's tons of people that's aspiring right now to be a WWE, whether it be referee, commentator, announcer, wrestler, So the fact that you made it there, that still, gives accolades to who you are.
No, I appreciate that. I really do. Probably one of the coolest things for me being there, and when I was there, was the first SmackDown show that I did was actually in Providence, Rhode Island, which I'm from Pawtucket originally, and I used to go to shows at the Providence. I used to go to shows at the Providence Civic Center when they ran pretty much every month. Ended up working at the Civic Center when I was in high school, selling lemonade and stuff like that, being a vendor at the hockey games, at basketball games. But the first SmackDown I did was in that building. I had called shows previously there. I did main event, and I think I might have done 2 main events. Anyway, but my first SmackDown was there in that building that my dad took me to, and my grandfather would come with us. And
wow.
And the coolest thing for me is that one of my closest friends was sitting right behind me at the announce desk, and then another friend of mine was sitting right next to him with his daughter. And it turns out that he knows a couple of guys in the company. He ended up getting tickets, and my friend Chris asked me if I could leave tickets for him. I said, sure, absolutely. I had no idea that they were going to put them right behind the announce table. So to be able to go out there on my on my first show doing SmackDown on a national network, to have my best friend or kid that I grew up with and played in bands with and whatever. To have him there and then to have like other people that I knew so close was it's crazy. I can't really describe that. So I've said it before. It wasn't as long of a run as I wanted. I don't really like the way that it ended, but like you said, it's something that a lot of people aspire to. That's not lost on me at all. And just to have the opportunity to do that is like, I can't really put it into words because it's crazy that I was even there.
Thank you for that. Me and Saltine, my media assistant, who I'm gonna bring in now in a second, we were laughing because a fan sent us a funny meme of Tom Phillips was talking on SmackDown, and behind him was a black fan, like a dad sitting next to a son, and he was going to sleep. He was like a serious slump. His head was nodding back, and he kept zooming in on his face. And you see Tom Phillips talking with JBL, and that meme was hilarious, but it lasted for about maybe an hour before WWE or the user, whoever it was, deleted it. I just thought that was funny. So it was funny. Go ahead, Saltine. I know you there with us. Go ahead, brother. I know you had a question to ask.
All right. Hi, Rich. How you doing, brother?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? My question for you is, as a play-by-play commentator, what have you learned from anyone you know? Who was your mentor? Who did you look up to as growing up doing this kind of job? Or you came in the job just like, hey, I want to try it, and let's do it. Let's see what happens. So how that came about?
It was a little bit of both. Like I mentioned before, growing up, watching wrestling and watching Vince and Gorilla Monsoon and listening to those guys, not really at that point with the idea that this is something that I wanted to do, but like everybody, you grew up listening to them, and those were voices that you welcomed into the home. A lot of announcers are like that. Vin Scully with the Dodgers was like that. Every team or city has somebody like that, and for a lot of us, it was the wrestling announcers. So between listening to Vince and listening to Gorilla, Ron Frongard is a guy who I listened to a lot. Obviously, ESPN was on, or AWA was on ESPN back in those days, so he was the announcer for a long time of that. And then, honestly, Tony Schiavone is a guy who really kind of, I think the first time that I ever kind of got the idea of what the different roles were, color guy, play-by-play guy, that type of thing, was watching wrestling on WTBS on Saturday nights. So I always enjoyed the way Tony.
Rich, you still there? Do apologize, fans. Rich phone call did drop, so that efforts hit your queen. So we'll bring Rich back momentarily. So we'll just wait for the call back. Do apologize. This is live radio. Phone call did drop at times, so we'll bring him back in a second. As you mentioned about giving a good shout out to Tony Schiavone. A lot of people don't tend to give him credit where credit is due. Of course, Jim Ross being great and Gordon Soley. But so Tony Schiavone was a great one as well. And so was Jesse Ventura. Ever since you're clean, we do see you. We'll bring you in definitely. Okay, Rich, you back with us?
I am. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. You was speaking about Schiavone. With Schiavone, you learned the difference of play-by-play and color.
Yeah. So that's kind of I think that's the first time that I understood a little bit what each guy kind of did. And then from there, just growing up, listening to hockey games, watching hockey on TV. I mentioned Fred Cusick was the voice of the Bruins on TV. Him along with Derek Sanderson had a pretty big impact on me, especially Fred. I got to know him a little bit as well. He was very, very helpful to me. Growing up as well, some of the announcers on ESPN that did hockey. Gary Thorne, I'd say, is a big influence. There was a guy. Yeah, Thorne. He's still doing the Orioles, isn't he?
Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love Gary Thorne.
Gary Thorne's amazing, and there was a guy named Tom Mees who did play-by-play on ESPN2 for a long time. He passed away about probably 15 years ago. Whatever. But I thought he was excellent. And then just kind of getting involved in the business in hockey, you start listening to other announcers and stuff. But almost touching on like what you said as well, I kind of went in. Even though I was influenced by some of these people, it was never an idea I want to try to sound like this guy or that guy or whoever. I just kind of went and did it. So when I first started doing play-by-play for hockey, it was literally going to games at the time with a tape deck and sitting there and just learning how to call a game just by doing it and listening back to it. And those first three, I haven't listened back to some of those tapes in a long time, but I know the last time I did, I cringed, and I probably cringe even more now. But that's really that's probably the best way and really the only way to learn how to do it. Right. Same thing with wrestling. I had never called a wrestling match ever in my life when I started doing ROW with Booker. I knew how to do play-by-play. I knew how to do radio. Hockey, football, baseball, whatever, and I liked wrestling. I had obviously listened to plenty of wrestling announcers, but I had never called a match in my life. The first show that I did for Booker, and it was a challenge for sure. Something that I think I picked up. You guys can be the judges of whether or not I'm any good at it, but to me, I feel like I picked up on it pretty well. And from there, it was, 2 years later, I'm in WWE, which is insane.
Wow. Yeah, it is. Like I said, if it was meant to be, it was meant for you to go to WWE. It was meant for you. Every step in your journey was meant for you to be there. Because if not, it wouldn't have happened. Now we're going to bring in right now one of our other good old hosts, the Angry One, Angry Mark. Welcome, brother.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
Angry Mark, how are you?
I am doing well, sir. Great to hear you on Under the Mat Radio. Was a big fan. I didn't admit that much, but I did want to call in and ask you a couple questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the fact that you like what I did.
So, first I want to ask, can you tell us the hiring process that you went through to get the position at WWE?
Sure. It was. There's a little bit of a backstory to this that I'll give you kind of the quick version. I was working a day job. Had been working with Booker for about 6 months or so. I had a regular gig that the company was not doing well at all. I actually interviewed for a position with the Houston Texans, not doing play-by-play, but doing some website stuff and some other radio stuff for them. Ultimately, I didn't get the job, but their radio play-by-play guy, Mark Vandermeer, was very complimentary of my work and kind of nudged me a little bit. He said, you really need to be calling games somewhere. There's no reason you shouldn't be calling games somewhere. At that point, I hadn't been calling hockey for about a year and a half, I think, maybe 2 years or so. I was doing some local sports radio, but not doing play-by-play anywhere. Besides, at that point, doing Booker's show for about 5 or 6 months at that point. When I mentioned to my wife what Mark said to me, she looked at me and she said, "You need to talk to Booker." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "You need to talk to him to see if he thinks you have what it takes to get to WWE." And I kind of hesitated on that because a lot of people go to book school either as wrestlers or they go there to learn the business, and they think because he's Booker T, and at the time because he was on TV a lot more, they automatically kind of think that's their meal ticket. I didn't want to be like that. If something was going to happen, I wanted it to be on the merits of whether I was good enough or not. When I finally got up the nerve to talk to Book about it, he looked at me and he said, "I think you're ready right now." And that was in July of 2013, I guess. So I put some stuff together. About 6 months later at the December show that we did, Michael Cole came in. TLC was the next night in Houston. That was on the Sunday, so our show was on a Saturday. Cole actually, at that point, he'd seen my stuff. Booker had helped me get it into the right hands. Cole was taking over hiring the announcers at that point. He had made a trip up to the show. I called, I think, 2 matches with him or whatever. And next thing I know, he called me up and told me he was bringing me in for a tryout to Orlando. So they brought me in the end of January. Did the tryout. They offered me a job that day, and I accepted. It was contingent on my wife and I making the move over to Orlando, and we did. We packed up the stuff as quickly as we could, and here we are.
Wow. So there's a lot of mainstream attention going on right now with JBL.
You're kidding.
So, yeah, right? So, you know, Justin Roberts is talking about stuff. Formerly Johnny Nitro is talking about stuff. With a publicly traded company and an anti-bullying program, and you have Stephanie doing everything under the sun to boost the brand, what's your opinion when it comes to possible backstage bullying or anything like that inside the WWE? Did you ever witness any?
I saw things that I didn't like. I've said this before, and this is no secret to anybody. Politics is a huge part of being there. And I don't mean Democrat, Republican, obviously. I mean politics within the company. You don't shake somebody's hand the right way. You don't, you walk by somebody and you don't say hi to them for whatever reason or whatever it is. There's little petty things like that, which, sometimes you don't even realize you did something. And then next thing you know, you find out that you have heat about X, Y, and Z. And it's usually the pettiest, the pettiest shit that you can think of. Can I say it?
Yeah, you can say what you want to hear.
Okay, all right. Okay. So it's petty stuff like that. That kind of adds up. There's politics. There's an in-group, if you will. Is there bullying? I don't know for sure. It's definitely a culture and an environment that breeds it. Is there ribbing? Of course there's ribbing. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. But there's definitely an element of that. Again, some of it's harmless, but I think some of it is not so harmless that's wrapped up in the excuse of being harmless ribbing, if that makes sense.
Well, let me ask you kind of a direct question then. If you're sitting there with your best friend and he says, hey, I got this job offer from WWE to go in there, be an announcer, and he asks you about the environment and should I do it, what are you going to tell him?
Just go in with eyes wide open and don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody. Keep your nose clean. Don't say it. It can be a catch-22 sometimes because as much as you want to, sometimes you kind of keep to yourself a little bit. You don't get involved in stuff. Sometimes that's also looked at as being standoffish. So you need to kind of find that middle ground. Somebody's always going to find something to say about you. Somebody's always going to find a way to try to cut you off at the knees. Sometimes it's how you handle it. Sometimes sometimes you just have to no-sell stuff. But again, I can't speak for anybody else. There comes a certain point where stuff is not as harmless as maybe it seems. And I've seen that a couple times. I don't feel like I got it really bad, but I also know that there are a couple things, and there are people that actively try to make things difficult for me. I don't know that it's all that different from working in any office or any big company where somebody's trying to get ahead, that there's going to be backbiting, there's going to be stuff like that. I think there's a bit more of maybe a magnifying glass on it because of what the company is and the people who are there, and because it's look, nobody's talking about the inner goings ons of the local insurance agency, right? Nobody's talking about what happens behind the scenes at Prudential. But there's a whole industry and there's a whole subculture. We're proof of it that we're even talking about this right now, that there's interest on that. Is it different? Like I said, is it different than anywhere else? I don't think it's that different from anywhere else. It's just a much more charged environment, I think.
I got you. My last question on a positive note. Tell us your best Undertaker story.
I don't even know that I really have one, to be honest with you. The first time I ever saw The Undertaker in person, I just said hi to him. He was at the Performance Center one day. There he was. I went up to him and talked to him. It was real quick. That's really it.
Well, we can edit that out then. No big deal. No, just kidding.
Well, no. I will say this. I remember being at SummerSlam. Well, actually, I can actually tell you a different one. Hold on. Since you asked, it just jogged something in my mind. I remember being in the runway that goes to Gorilla and seeing Undertaker getting ready for his match or whatever, and I thought that was cool because I grew up a fan of the Undertaker. To kind of tie the last two questions together in a way, we were in Manchester doing Manchester, England, doing SmackDown, and I believe it was right before probably Survivor Series, I think. And the Undertaker came out and just did a live spot. It wasn't for TV. It was just he was there to, I guess, ostensibly promote SummerSlam, promote Survivor Series, and get people to the arena, I imagine. But long story short, we do the show. The show's going on. We take a break so the Undertaker can come out and do his thing. I think he beat up Heath Slater or whoever it was. But we're sitting there. We weren't taping. There really wasn't anything going on except for this. So here comes the Undertaker. I took out my phone, took a couple of pictures, send them to my to my nephew and to my friend so he could show his son. And as cool as that was, I got so much shit in the headsets for doing that, being called a mark, and people laughing at me and saying, "Hey, if you want, we can have him wait for you. You can sign your phone for you or whatever." Stupid stuff like that. So I think that maybe ties the last two things together. It's like don't be too much of a fan of your own product or of the product that you're calling either, because you'll get shit for it.
Oh man.
I don't know if that makes me too much of a mark or not, but
that's fine. I'm pretty sure we've seen people do a lot worse. And like this, it's the Undertaker. I mean, granted, a lot of people really don't get to see him much, and that's fine. Angry Mark, did you have any more questions or anything to add on to it? Not sure. Angry Mark can hear us or not. Rich, you still there, right?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Okay, not sure. Angry Mark, you still there, brother? So you can't hear us money. Okay, thanks for that, Richard. We'll answer the questions about that. Okay, so with that, with him asking about the whole hazing thing with JBL, with a lot of people, Morrow, of course, just announced he's recently done with WWE. And we'll just get this out the way, and we'll go back to you, Rich. Your memories of your experience working with Morrow, and then your thoughts of the whole situation. Morrow tweeted saying, did a quote, I believe, from Buddha, or it was someone tweeted and said, 3 things you can't hide: the sun and the moon and the truth. The truth will be revealed soon enough. Of course, allegations of JBL being a bully. You being in WWE, thoughts on JBL, thoughts on Morrow, working there?
I never had any personal issues with Morrow. I wasn't there for too long after they brought him in, but it was okay. Obviously, I wasn't thrilled about getting bumped off of SmackDown, but I understood the decision, and to me, I treated him fine. Shook his hand. We talked. It was okay. Morrow is definitely a little bit of a different guy. I think in some ways we know how passionate he is about the business. I and I'm not trying to say this in a bad way. He's almost kind of eccentric. That's how good he is as an announcer, in his memory and the stuff that he knows, and that he can just pull off. And I mean that in the best way possible. I don't mean that in any disparaging way. Saying that, I can maybe see how some people might misunderstand him, or maybe take things the wrong way or whatever. But to me, he was always fine. I can't say that's all I can say about anybody, is how they treated me, and he was okay to me, at least to my face. JBL was difficult to work with as a broadcast partner. Can't really do anything about it because he's Vince's guy. And with this whole thing going on, will anything happen? I don't know. But JBL's kind of entrenched there. He basically violates every rule that they have for announcers, or how we're trained to be announcers, because he can. And that's really the long and short of it, because he can. Difficult to work with. Part of that is his heel persona. Some of that is if he doesn't like you or doesn't respect you or whatever. Some of that's dialed up a little bit. It kind of goes back to what I was saying, things that are passed off as, oh, this is ribbing, and you just need to learn how to take it. You can escalate that a little bit and say, well, it's just a rib. So he was difficult in some regards, and at times I didn't really feel like he worked to make the product better. He was just there to get himself over. You can agree or you can disagree with me on that, but most broadcast partners that I've worked with would take a little bit of time and sit down with you and say, okay, what do we want to do here? What do we want to do there? What can we talk about here? Part of that as well with him is the fact, like, when he's on as a color guy, when he's into it and when he cares, he's really, really good. He is that loud, brash, blowhard character. Is that really too far off from him as they say the best characters are your normal self dialed up to 10? I think that's true for JBL. Again, I found him difficult to work with at times. Backstage, he was okay to me. I never really had any run-ins necessarily. Sometimes he'd hop in the car and we'd drive back to the hotel, and he was always fine. Like, I just, that's what I can speak to. Can I see him giving Morrow a hard time? Absolutely, I can. Can I see him being relentless in it? Absolutely, I can. And I think that there's plenty of documented stories as well that kind of back that up. So, it's one of those things where I have to be careful in some ways too with the way that I say things, because then it comes off as, well, he's just bitter, or he's just still angry about getting let go, or any of that stuff. That's not the case. So can I see it happening with Morrow? Is there truth to that? I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, but I'd say that the probability of that is very likely. Or this could just all be an elaborate rib, and they're setting up for JBL versus Morrow at Extreme Rules or something. I don't know.
WrestleMania 34. Morrow versus JBL.
Nothing surprises me anymore with this business. I don't know why they would do this with an announcer, but I always like to cover myself there, because for all we know, this could just be some crazy elaborate rib. I doubt that it is, but
yeah. Anytime Morrow deleted, no pun intended, everything that was WWE-esque or anything that had anything to do with WWE, he removed it from his Twitter page. And right before air quote, I was getting hits up from sources. Angry Mark was too, about him leaving WWE or quitting. I know JBL tweeted Joe Cronin, which he rarely does back, and said, basically saying allegations were false. He wished Morrow the best, but put it like this: when you have a lot of people that we can document publicly, we can document unofficially off air, that we're not going to mention names of JBL with someone doing the same sort of story. After a while, it's got to be some kind of truth, some kind of silver lining here. You get what I mean? different people or all different that was there for different time periods. They have different roles within WWE, saying JBL doing the same antics, something similar. There has to be some kind of truth to it. That's how I feel with that as well. Funny inbox from a fan wanted to ask you, Rich. One, does Vince McMahon keep JBL around so he can continue to put WWE flags on top of mountains?
I think Vince probably gets some financial advice from JBL as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Here's some. Was there ever any talk of? It's funny. I got a text and this got 2 inboxes. Any talk of Joey Styles coming back to WWE TV, and also your thoughts of Joey Styles?
And are there any talk of him coming back now, or when I was there?
When you was there,
that I heard. Not that I heard, but I wouldn't necessarily know one way or the other what they're doing really until it happens. Usually, I like Joey. He's another guy that in the '90s I loved ECW, and Joey was the voice of that. Joey was always very cool to me. I've talked to him a number of times. I think it's unfortunate what happened a couple of months ago. Whether or not that comment was correct or proper or not, it's not something that I would say. But Joey's thing is being kind of edgy, and in some ways, like that going in, you understand that. I think Joey's a great announcer, great play-by-play guy, and rightfully he should have his spot at the table as far as influential and guys who were voices of an era. I don't think that one stupid thing should necessarily take him out of people's thoughts or whatever. I don't think that he should be like blacklisted or whatever. So I like Joe. I know he doesn't like to travel very much, so I doubt that you'd see him. Back in a chair somewhere. But I don't know. I think he likes his day job. He likes what he does. Again, always very cool to me. Like the way he called matches, and I would hate to see a guy who did so much in the business and for the business be completely blacklisted or whatever because of one thing. I didn't agree with what he said. I didn't like it. I don't know why you would say it, but again, that's Joey's thing, is to be edgy. So, yeah, that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. If you can, and then we'll get back to fans. I know you have a lot of questions to ask, so we'll get to all of them as soon as we can. Explain the difference when you were commentating for NXT. Talk to us about their process, as far as NXT, any runs with Dusty Rhodes, Terry Taylor, Triple H, and then explain to us, if so, any differences or any tweaks you had to do to your commentating style when you got caught up to SmackDown.
So obviously that was the first show that I did. I did NXT for the first year that I was there, into the second year that I was there as well. But the first year it was solely NXT. That was it. So I called the show, and then I'd be at the Performance Center pretty much every day in the voiceover room, and they're calling matches hours at a time. Sometimes calling the same matches over and over and over and over and over again. And I would try to get the talent in there at least once or twice, just to kind of give them an idea of what we do and why we do certain things. So that was very cool. So I pretty much worked with everybody there at one point who was there from 2014, 2015. So we would do that, and I would also work with my broadcast partners. Jason Albert would come in before he was the head coach, and we'd spend an hour or two calling matches. Corey Graves and I would be in there, as I said, for hours and hours and hours, just practice doing stuff, calling matches. just working on the craft and figuring it out as we went. Michael Cole was very involved. I'm assuming he's still the producer for the announcers at NXT. I know he wants to move more into producing up on the big shows as well, if you want to call them the big shows. He would Skype in sometimes. He was connected to the computer that's in there, so we were able to actually route the video and audio that we were practicing calling. We could actually route it to him so he could see us and see what we were calling and listen to it and kind of critique us right on the spot. So that was helpful. A lot of the other stuff at NXT and the Performance Center that year was live event stuff, just going, setting up the ring and setting up the audio and running cables and rigging up the lights and doing all that stuff. As far as the style of calling the show, NXT, the idea was it to be more classic wrestling, if you will, more of a focus on wrestling, the traditional stuff in some ways, obviously sprinkled in with the WWE way of doing things. So we were allowed and encouraged to call the action a little bit more down there. But WWE is a storytelling company, so you always had to make sure that you were telling the story and getting over the story the best that you can. From that to main event, from that to Superstars, because the first show I did was Superstars, that was a completely different thing, because if you ever watched Superstars when it was on, it was basically a Raw recap show, and there'd be, I think, 2 matches on there. We weren't they didn't even want us calling the action that much. During those matches, they wanted us talking about other stuff and putting over the stories of stuff that was going to come later on. So that was challenging to go from focusing on what's going on in the ring at NXT all the time to going there and doing that show and being told, call the high spots, but just get over stories of other stuff that's going on. So that could be challenging in some ways. Main event was a little more action oriented. The focus being much more on the in-ring stuff, to the point that I think there was maybe one promo segment during that show. It wasn't a promo heavy show. It was more of an action oriented show. And then going to SmackDown, where it's kind of that hybrid between Raw, where you're telling stories all the time, and SmackDown, which even now I guess is still more action oriented, but you still have to make sure you get the stories in. So there's different nuances to each show. But the biggest adjustment was going from, again, NXT, where you're focusing on the action, to going to the main roster, where you're not, for the most part, you're not really focusing on what's going on in the ring. So being able to kind of juggle those and master those took some time. And I don't know that I did master it. So
any Dusty Rhodes stories? Any run-ins of working with Dusty Rhodes, working with Regal or Triple H?
So Triple H wasn't really down there that much. He comes in for the TV tapings. Obviously, he's on the road for Raw and SmackDown and the pay-per-views. He's got his office gig up there, so it's not like he was at the Performance Center every day. He's actually, believe it or not, he's wired into the Performance Center. There's cameras all over the place, and at any time he can actually click on a website and then click on whatever camera he wants. He can watch what's going on in the ring and kind of see who's doing what. So he was never really far away. I'll say that much. But he wasn't necessarily in there hands-on on a day-to-day basis. Dusty, I worked with pretty much every day when I was there. Mondays would always be promo class night. Well, there'd be promo class actually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at the end of the day. It'd be like 6 or 6:30 usually. Sometimes we could talk them into starting at 5:30, but it would always be I'm trying to remember, like the new kids were mostly on Mondays, and then like intermediate would be Tuesday, and then they'd have pretty much everybody come in on Wednesday and you do stuff. But between that and then just sitting in the office and just being able to talk to him and pick his brain There's just so many cool things that, especially for a kid who grew up probably identifying more with the NWA style of wrestling than the WWF style. To go in there and it's like, holy shit, this is the guy that booked Crockett. This is the guy that booked my favorite era in wrestling is the Crockett era.
My favorite too.
This is the guy that booked it. So just to be able to pick his brain on different things, Dream, why'd you put the title on Garvin? And having him explain that, and because I actually liked Ronnie Garvin, but it just seemed like a weird thing that they would put the title on him for such a short reign.
Have him leaves it within a week.
Yeah,
hands of stone.
So he explained the rationale behind that a little bit, and aside from that, just getting to know him away from wrestling. I mean, we were there at the Performance Center, but we'd talk about whatever. He was a big baseball fan. He was a big Yankees fan. Just funny. Some of the stuff that he would come out with was just priceless. A couple of his lines, I remember he'd always say in promo class, remember, if you don't like what's going on, you could always be shoveling shit somewhere in Louisiana. And that was a good way to keep things in perspective. And I remember another one of his lines one day was he was telling the kids at promo class, he's like, basically that I forget what led to it, but the line was, you can't roller skate through a buffalo herd. And think about that for a second. You can't roller skate through a buffalo herd. You put it in perspective and in context with what he was talking about with one of these young talents going up to the main roster. And the idea of that is, obviously, if you try to go against the flow up there, it's not really going to work too well. So you kind of have to take what they give you and make it the best that it can be. So that was, but it to me, it just sticks out of my mind. You can't roller skate through a buffalo herd. It's good stuff.
We had Bill DeMott on the show, former coach trainer in WWE, and he told the story of Dusty. They was at the Performance Center, and one of the staff members didn't know who Dusty was, and Dusty got mad. And Dusty famous was like, Google me, you don't know who Dusty is? I can't do Dusty Rose, but Dusty got a legit attitude because the staff member was like, who are you? And Dusty was like, you don't know who I am? He was like, Google me. You don't know what he said. So Dusty was irate because the staff member didn't know who he was. Actually, this question we bring in other staff members. With the unfortunate passing of Dusty, do you feel the NXT brand is affected because of it? I mean, of course, we could say yes, but did you see a difference being there, and even if you're not being WWE anymore, do you see a difference in NXT once Dusty passed away?
Yes and no. Dusty didn't write NXT. He had input to the show, and I know Hunter would call him and lean on him for ideas. But as far as Dusty actually writing the show, to my knowledge, he didn't write the show. He worked with the talent there, really just teach them how to talk, teaching them how to relate, trying to get different emotions out of them at promo class. He would have ideas. He'd come up with characters for guys. The Wyatt family is a Dusty creation. I think what changed was really how do you replace a guy like that when he's there all the time and just such a wealth of knowledge? How do you replace that? There was just a void there in so many different ways with Dusty not being there. And has it affected the show or the brand or whatever? I mean, yeah, Dusty not being there to use his wealth of knowledge and to kind of maybe coach some of these kids a little bit too. But like as far as the actual stories of the show, I think it was going to change one way or another as it grew. So Dusty being there or Dusty not being there, I think that the brand was going to change because of the way it was growing. As far as I haven't watched it in forever, so I couldn't even tell you what the show looks like right now. I couldn't tell it. I was actually looking at the roster on Twitter. There were pictures from the live event, and I was scrolling through some of them, and I didn't even know who half the roster was. Like, I don't know who these people are. So as far as what it's like now, I don't know. But I think around the summer of 2015, going into Brooklyn. And I felt like that first wave really of the current NXT was kind of cresting right there either way. And I felt that after that it kind of dropped off a little bit. There was, we did the show in October with the Iron Woman match, which was awesome. It was a great match. The show itself was pretty good. And then we kind of went into we did London, which was the last show that I did. It was interesting in the sense that it was from London and the crowd was so hot. I don't know that the card itself really kind of stacked up to what we had done in the shows before that. And I think after that it maybe kind of pulled up again. You had that Zayn Nakamura match at Mania last year. For NXT, but really, you can really look at NXT and you can really see the difference, after Brooklyn into London and then coming back up over to WrestleMania. You look at the brand and the people who are there, and it really is almost two completely different companies, or two completely different things. Because at that point, I think Charlotte was up, right? I think Sasha was up.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Sammy was up, Kevin was up, or whatever. So I really felt like that shift was going to happen eventually, whether Dusty was there or not. But you can't take away anything that obviously that Dusty did in his career, but what an influence he was just as a whole over NXT. We lost something. We lost something really big with Dusty passing, and it sucks for the guys who are there now. So some of the new people coming in now, because they'll never have the opportunity to. We used to call it sit under the learning tree with Dusty. They'll never have that opportunity. So you can't replace that. You can't replace it.
Yeah, you can't. You definitely can't. Toph, we got you on, man. Other correspondent, you had a question too for Rich. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I have a few questions. My questions are mostly obscure, though. So if you don't mind, I'll be prepared for some random obscure questions. My first question is, this is one of the most embarrassingly asked questions. What do you do when you're in the commentary table and you have to use the restroom? Do you guys, use it before showtime? Or is during a commercial break do you go? Or, obviously, if you're doing tapings, it's just 2 hours. But what do you do? If you're a 3-hour, 4-hour show, what do you do? Do you hold it? What's that about?
Yeah, you gotta pace yourself. I actually I remember doing one taping at NXT. It was 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever, and it was really hot in that building. Because if you've ever been there, it tends to get pretty hot in there. So I'm sucking down water like crazy, and we're doing this on cam towards the end of the night, and I just had to pee so bad. I was sitting there, I was shaking in my seat, just kind of bouncing my legs up and down. And they said, "Oh, Rich, hold on 1 second. We need to retape this." So I'm sitting there, and one of the production guys came out with 6 bottles of water and put it in front of me, and they kind of gave it to me a little bit. But that's actually it's a funny question, because those long shows, you hold it. That's it. I suppose if there is time, you might be able to get up and run to the bathroom, but it's kind of frowned upon. So you either go before you go out there, or you hold it, or worst comes to worst, you grab a bottle or something. I never had to do that, but I've heard stories of people getting Gatorade bottles and stuff when the lights are out and taking care of what they got to take care of.
I shouldn't be laughing at that, but I am. Okay, gotta get serious now. All right.
Sure.
My next question. What's your opinion? I don't know if you've been paying attention to like what's going on in other companies and stuff, but firstly, I guess it's really like two questions into one. First question: did you ever have like a working relationship/friendship with Josh Matthews? And secondly, what's your opinion of what's going on down there on TNA/Impact Wrestling? I don't know if you're aware. He's kind of like a heel commentator, kind of obnoxious, kind of annoying.
Yep.
He's kind of arguing with Jeremy Borash right now. It's not necessarily one of the important storylines, but it's featured. He's kind of a troll on Twitter. Like, what do you think's going on? What's your opinion about all that?
All right. So did I think I met Josh once. I think I'm not even 100% sure of that. I believe he was gone by the time that I came into the company, or he might have still been there when I was in NXT. But anyway, by the time that I was brought up on the road, he wasn't there. So I don't know him. I'm not a fan of what they're doing with that stuff, just simply because for me, I don't really feel like the announcers should be a storyline. I think that with the talent you have, you should have more than enough to focus on the wrestlers. I personally find it distracting when the announcers are kind of, I don't want to say getting themselves over, but when the story's about them, I haven't seen a lot of TNA. I haven't seen a lot of what's or Impact or whatever. I haven't really seen a lot of what's going on. All I know is what I've read. I get why they're doing it. I'm not a fan of that type of storyline. Is from what I've seen, Josh and Borash. I mean, they're both pros. They both know what they're doing. They're both good at what they do. I'm personally not a fan of that type of a storyline. So.
Okay. My last question for you. You kind of half answered this question earlier. You mentioned how you spend a lot of time calling matches and, different partners and stuff. The third question I got for you is the different moves that you call. So like if someone does a Hurricane Rana or like a, suicide dive, stuff like that, where did you get your knowledge? Where do most commentators get their knowledge of wrestling moves? Would you say, from your experience of being there, do you guys get your knowledge from, going over matches as tests? Like, for instance, if you're there and they say, hey, we need you to do 2 or 3 NXT tapings, like, do you watch old stuff to learn? Or do you get your knowledge from just the years of following wrestling, years prior before you even got in the company, and you just know the moves already? Or would you say like it's a mixture of both?
Yeah, it's probably a mixture of both. When I mentioned before when I called my first match for Booker's show, I had never called a wrestling match before, and as much as I had been watching at that point, most of it was Raw. I'd watched some Ring of Honor when it was on HDNet. I only had access to that channel for a little bit, but I tried to watch them. At that point of WWE, they really weren't calling a lot of moves, so it was funny because when I first started calling matches, I really had to go back and watch a lot of old stuff to kind of relearn certain things. And the other thing is there's so many variations of each move that it can be challenging in some ways, trying to make sure that, for instance, different suplex variations, making sure that you have the right variation of that suplex, because if you don't, you're going to get murdered online. The easy way around that is to say it's a suplex, right? But yeah, there was a lot of research, a lot of going on YouTube, looking at stuff, just trying to make sure that you have the right moves down. I try to be as accurate as I can be when I call matches. I tend to prefer to call moves by their regular name, by what it is. Again, when you have people that use the same move across companies that's got 10 different names, things get kind of muddy right there, and they can get kind of hazy. And it can trip you up a little bit. But I think from being around the guys, seeing guys go over matches, being at the Performance Center and actually watching like some of the classes that are going on and some of the different groups working together and getting to ask questions, you pick certain things up. So yeah, there was learning on the fly, but there was definitely going back, watching old stuff and kind of digging into the knowledge that you already have ingrained, that you know just from watching it for so long.
Okay. I know I said that was the last question, but what you just mentioned before about getting certain moves wrong and then being, teared apart online actually popped up one last question in my head. So far of your years of being a commentator, was there a particular move that you've had you had trouble remembering what it was? Like, is there a move that always gave you trouble? Me personally, the two moves that to this day still give me trouble are the belly-to-belly suplex and the belly-to-back suplex. I always get those two confused. And the one that really, really, upsets people is the Hurricane Rana versus Frankensteiner. A lot of Hispanic, well, let me rephrase that. A lot of Latino fans really get hot with that. Like, you can call like a Frankensteiner like at a Mexico show, and they'll be like, no, it was a Hurricane Rana or like whatever. Like, was there any moves like that ever got you in trouble when you were learning?
Well, I can definitely see the Hurricane Rana, Frankensteiner, flying head scissors, right? Because it's all a variation of kind of the same thing, sort of. And really, a lot of times, guys will call a Hurricane Rana. My understanding of a proper Hurricane Rana is that it's supposed to end in a pin, because a Rana means pin. So when you do the move, you're supposed to, for it to be an actual Hurricane Rana, you're supposed to immediately pin the guy, right? And if you don't, is that a Frankenstein? I don't know, right? It gets so muddy, it gets so confusing, and if you can ask 10 different people, honestly, and get 10 different answers from 10 different people about a move like that. And yeah, the Hurricane Rana Frankensteiner one, that's a big one. And honestly, I'm like the most embarrassing one for me, which people gave me shit about. I've told this story before. I call the Bronco a Bronco Buster. I call the Fez Press a Bronco Buster when we were taping. It was before Takeover Brooklyn, and we were calling. We were like 2 matches before the main show, and they were taping the matches. And they told us, hey, just go out there, get loose, get warmed up. We're going to re-record this stuff anyway. So I was half paying attention, not really even looking at the monitor. And Braves and I were just kind of talking back and forth. And at that point, it was just me. They didn't bring Byron out until the live show because he was going to be around for the shows that we taped. So anyway, it was me and Graves. And again, not really paying attention. I was going over the run sheet for the Takeover show, kind of flipping through stuff, writing down notes, and I just kind of out of the corner of my eye, I saw Carmella. I don't even know who she was in the ring with, but I saw her do the move, and for some reason I thought she was like in the ropes, but she's dead center of the ring, and I said, Bronco Buster. Graves, that's a Fez Press, Rich, and oh god, the shit that I got on Twitter for that.
That's funny. Thanks for the question. Thanks for answering the questions. That's all I have.
Yeah, thanks, Toph. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Toph. Great questions, Toph. Exo, go ahead, brother. I know you've been waiting. I know, Rich, we got good old staff, radio staff. Exo, our editor, go ahead. So you had a question.
Hey, what's going on, Rich? How you doing this evening?
Hey, what's up, man?
Nothing much. I have a question. By you working in the doing the backstage commentating for Raw, NXT, and SmackDown, did you have any superstars that you might have did interviews or shoots with that you liked and or disliked?
I would say that I liked 90% of the people that were there. Kevin Owens and I thought did some really funny stuff, and I like Kevin a lot. As an in-ring performer, as a person, I like Kevin. He's a good guy, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing some of the stuff that we did. Him calling me Millhouse and coming over and stealing my phone and spiking my phone off the steps, and just some of the goofy stuff that we did backstage. The one where he was hiding behind a plant and he yells at me because he's fun stuff, and I really enjoyed all that. The New Day and I did some stuff that was fun.
Yeah, Fantasy did too.
Yeah, I all those guys were cool to me. Trying to think of some of the other stuff that there was a lot. Heath Slater and I did an interview that was fun. He dumped ice on me or whatever, and that was fun. I really, I can't, there were very few people that I didn't like. For me, I just tried to get along with everybody. I tried to get along with everybody, and there are some people, I guess, that you probably just naturally get along with better than other people. I don't necessarily want to mention any names of, I didn't like this guy or I didn't like that guy, because there's probably no good reason for it. It's just somebody that maybe I just didn't see eye to eye with or whatever. So, I don't want to make it sound like somebody's a bad guy because we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on things. There are people there that I actively dislike. That to use an old phrase, I if they were on fire, I wouldn't piss on them. There's a few people there like that.
Dang.
By and large, by and large, everybody there. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I have mostly good things to say about.
Well, one of those people has to have the initials JBL that you said you wouldn't be.
Wow.
Oh, come on, Tech, man. You should have been more low-key with it. You should have been like, there's one of the members like has a hat or something.
We're not low-key. You already know how we are.
There's believe it or not, there's actually people that I dislike more. So,
oh, wow.
That is what it is. So
they made the list. They made his list. The secret list.
Dude, and the funny thing is, like, I'm sure I'm on somebody else's list, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it just becomes kind of bullshit and stupid and whatever. I mentioned before what a political place.
JBL's on Vince's list because he isn't gone yet, so.
No, it is a political place, and if you're in with the right people, then you can kind of do what you want and whatever. And if certain people don't like you, or somebody doesn't like you, and that's the other thing with that play. There's the old phrase, tell a phone, tell a friend, tell a wrestler, right? Like, and the most petty things sometimes will get passed around from person to person. By the time that you hear about it, it's become this giant, enormous thing, and you have to try to explain away something that really was inconsequential to begin with. It's very, very weird.
Well, I'll mention this, and I'll have Mark ask another question. We'll go back to then we'll start talking on other topics. Rich, there, I know you like politics, the real politics. I was told by reliable sources of a good friend of mine who worked with Triple H for 8 years, and I mentioned his name, and it was confirmed a lot the past few weekends going to WrestleMania that you cannot sneeze around Vince McMahon. You cannot sneeze around.
That is what I was told.
And he's a germaphobe. He always says hand sanitizer, and I've been told stories of some of the boys that sneezed around Vince when they had a meeting and they got chewed out. So, yeah, it definitely is that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Vince, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there's a lot of that there. Vince has his things that he likes and that he doesn't like. He doesn't like people who nod at him. For instance, like, don't ever nod at Vince. If you're listening and you're kind of, oh yeah, I understand. Don't ever nod. Don't sneeze. Don't certain words you're not supposed to say. But I suppose when you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company or whatever it is, you can do those things.
Hmm. Well, while we're on the topic, and I'll bring Angry Mark back in. Story of meeting Vince. If you met Vince, a lot of people say he's very intimidating. Some people say he's very approachable. And that's something that say he isn't. Your take on Vince McMahon as far as working with him?
I never worked real close with Vince. Obviously met him a handful of times, spoke to him a number of times. I never really had a very long conversation with Vince. Was always, you go up to him, hello, sir, how are you? Shake his hand, whatever. I'd see him walking around the arena or in the meeting or whatever. Hello, Vince. Hello, Rich. How are you? Okay, whatever. That was really the extent of it. I never really had the opportunity to sit down and have a very long conversation with Vince. For the most part, as far as being on the headsets and stuff, Vince wasn't talking to me very much. Usually Cole was on the headset to me. The one show that I do remember doing that Vince was on the headset was the Madison Square Garden show, the live show that was in October of 2015, I think. Vince was producing the announcers that night, and is he intimidating? Yeah, he's Vince. He's got that persona about him. At the end of the day, he's the boss. He's the guy that makes all the decisions, and he's very, very tough on the announcers. He's very specific with what he wants. He has an idea of what he wants. Sometimes there's a lot of those things that you kind of need to figure out. You kind of have to figure it out on your own. A lot of times you're not told about certain things, but again, from my limited dealings with him, it was very professional. Hello, sir. How are you? Hello, Rich. Okay, whatever. And that was that. So I suppose it's not fair to me to say one way or the other. Vince is he's a good guy, a bad guy, whatever. He was always okay to me.
Thank you for that. Angry Mark, where you at? Angry Mark, you back, brother?
I am back. I cracked open another beer for me, not for the working man, just for me. So, got to be a little greedy. It's my beer. But, no, my question is kind of like, you were a fan of the business, obviously. So this is like a fan question, even though you worked there. So the OVW class that came in early 2000s, Randy Orton, Batista, John Cena, the Viper Randy Orton. Since that class of OVW, we haven't seen the WWE truly build any other soup under the age of 26. We see the WWE signing talent that are in their late 30s, very late 30s in some cases, to the brand, but we don't see the build of the stars that we can connect with, over the long term. Like, I can speak for myself, watching Clash of Champions 1, Sting and Ric Flair, that really drew me in, okay? Watching Hulk Hogan slam Andre the Giant, that got me. But nowadays, we don't see the stars, so to speak, truly being homegrown and built for superstardom. And we can tell that when we watch the Hall of Fame. The first people that are inducted year after year, unless it was Sting, unless you were homegrown, you're getting inducted first and second, like the Rock and Roll Express, DDT. So, in your opinion, has the WWE went to buy a star because they don't know how to make them anymore, in my opinion?
You could go back. I've talked about this with some friends and stuff, and just kind of thought about this on my own. A lot of people say that WWE hasn't really built a star in the last however long, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But to say that they used to develop stars on their own, in some ways, I guess they did, but they were still taking guys who were seasoned vets from whatever it was, the UWF or wherever, Mid-South, right? They brought in Ted DiBiase. You worked for years, known as this great mat technician. They brought him in to do $1 Million Man. There's a whole handful of guys who were names. Hogan was kind of a name in the AWA, right? So, he'd already done the Rocky movie. But obviously they made him what he is. I would argue, and in some ways, I think it's more difficult now to build stars. In some ways, because there's too much of it. It's there. Before it was you waited for Saturday morning, and you got your hour of wrestling challenge and your hour of superstars of wrestling, and they had the Monday night show, and that was kind of secondary. There was always like matches from Boston Garden or Maple Leaf Gardens or Madison Square Garden or wherever. So it was, you're really getting an hour, 2 hours a week of WWF, and if you watch the NWA, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, you get at a TBS show if the Braves weren't on. I think maybe in the last few years too, the way the independents have kind of sprouted up again. You have more places where guys can work, and kind of make a name for themselves and build themselves up and learn the business. I really think just the amount of content that's out there in some ways. It's when you saw Hulk Hogan back in the day, when you saw him in a match, it was special because you never saw him in a match. It was always promos that built up the story leading to, at first WrestleMania, then Mania and SummerSlam, then eventually the big four pay-per-views. I think in some ways that really hurts the product, is because guys just get overexposed. And you hear that term a lot. What does that really mean? It means that you run out of material for them. So what might take 3 months or 4 months, 10, 20 years ago to tell this story, now they're telling it in a matter of 4 weeks, and people get bored with it. I think that's a huge problem.
So, to kind of carry on to that question, if you were booking right now the Superstar Shakeup that is coming up this week, who do you want to see move brands, and why?
You know what? I would have to know who's on what brand to begin with. I know Baron Corbin, they're trying to do stuff with. I don't know if he's on SmackDown or Raw.
He's SmackDown right now.
He's SmackDown. I mean, does he have what it takes to main event on Raw? He, as far as talking, I know that's not really his strong point, but I think there's something special about him. He's got an interesting look. He's interesting in the ring. I think Strowman's a guy who, if you do it the right way and you protect him in the ring, you don't have him do stuff that he really can't do. He's got the opportunity, just because of his look and his size, I think, to be a star. As far as I guess that's of the guys, just off the top of my head. I think Kevin Owens, you do so much with him. And are they? I don't know. I guess he was a Universal Champion, but from what I read, he's kind of still undercard. Sami Zayn is a guy that I guess got a little bit of a push, but now he's not for whatever reason. Those are guys that I think can do stuff, but I don't know. A lot of it comes down to presentation and the material that they're given. And as I said, when you do as much content as they do these days, it's difficult to keep stuff fresh and to come up with stories that are gonna engage people.
Well, I agree with you on Baron Corbin, and on this podcast last year, I actually went to one of those wrestling bet sites, which was kind of funny, and I actually made a wager that Baron Corbin is going to main event WrestleMania 35.
Oh, wow.
I think he's one of the few guys right now that didn't come from, another indie or another, I call them semi-pros, like Ring of Honor and TNA.
Right.
They're AAA. But I just think Baron Corbin has that hit factor, and I really don't think he needs to do a lot of promos to get his point across. If they book him right, Kane had the mask, but he didn't have talked and he lost it. I think Baron Corbin really reminds me a lot personally of Kane, but with a better moveset.
I could potentially see that.
Yeah.
You know, I know I mentioned Strowman as well, and I guess so Mojo Rawley, I guess, won the Battle Royal. I don't know if they're going to do anything with him. So he's a really, really interesting guy. I know, like, the whole hype thing is kind of, I guess, maybe piss people off or whatever. Oh, this guy's too happy or whatever. But I've seen him do stuff in promo class. I remember him doing heel stuff where I felt like it worked. If they went that direction with him, I think it could work. It's just this kind of aggressive. When he lets that aggressive side out, he's interesting. I also think the whole hype bro thing and him being hyped and all this and that, I think that connects with kids in a certain way, or that it has the potential to. Will it? I don't know. But he's another guy that he's got that. There's an it factor about him, just as a person, that has the ability to translate to what he's doing in WWE. Whether or not that happens, there's a whole million other reasons why it may or may not happen. But just as far as somebody from the way they work, and I don't mean in the ring, I just mean the work they put in to what they do. I would love to see Mojo, become a prominent player there, because he deserves it.
Well, I got to get going, but my last question I always ask everybody is, what is your favorite adult beverage?
You know what? I quit drinking almost 4 years ago. I used to like it. I did, yeah, man. I've been on the wagon for 4 years. Shiner out of Texas, which I guess you can get everywhere now. Shiner would put out at Christmas. What was it? Oh, Shiner Cheer, and it had this. It was like there were peaches and other spices in it, but it wasn't like a fruity beer. It was fantastic. That and St. Arnold's is another brewery out of Houston that makes just incredible stuff. I remember the Lawnmower was probably their most popular one. They had a couple other brews as well that were just fantastic. So between those and Guinness and actually Young's, if you ever had Young's, it's the Young's the chocolate extra stout. It was really, really good. So there you go. Yeah, now you guys are gonna make me relapse on that. Now I got beer on
Have you ever had a flat tire?
Yes, a flat tire or a fat tire.
Well, as far as the beverage.
Yeah, no, for sure. Fat tire. I've had many of those.
Wow. Well, thank you for answering, and you have a great night.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Hey, man, that was a good old buddy, Angry Mark, here with Rich. On the show, a fan just sent me this, Rich. You said Shiner Beer, I believe some called Bach. There's a Wiki Ram IPA.
Okay.
Is that correct? Golden Ale, Holiday Cheer, Strawberry Blonde.
It's going to be the Holiday Cheer. The Holiday Cheer.
Okay. Ruby Redbird.
No, I remember the Ruby Redbird, but no, it was the Holiday Cheer, which was you can only get it for you can only get it for like I think like November, December you could get it, and it would usually run out by mid-December because they only made so much of it.
Oh, they got something called Coffee Ale, birthday beer. There you go, cold brew coffee ale. Yeah, fan that sent me the website, light blonde, homespun cream ale, black lager. We were not trying to get you to relapse, Rich. This active fans that listen to the show.
Go for my beer advocate recommendation. 4 years later, it's still the Young's Double Chocolate Stout. Fantastic stuff.
Oh man, stout. That's some strong stuff there, as I was told. Thank you for that. Now, speaking of segue, Baron Corbin, who our correspondent told us was like Fulton from Mighty Ducks, you being a hockey fanatic, your thoughts of the Mighty Ducks movies, 1, 2, and did Mighty Ducks 3, in your opinion, happen? I know here in the show we talk about things that never happened, as far as movies, TV shows, even wrestling events that is so bad we act like didn't exist. Your thoughts, the best Mighty Ducks movie and the worst?
The best one's got to be the first one. And I'd say that with most things, the first one's probably the best. I don't even know that I saw Mighty Ducks. Well, wait a minute. Did I see Mighty Ducks 3? Is that the one where Gordon Bombay plays? Does he end up playing Pro in that one?
I don't. Toph? What's Toph at? I'm trying. I haven't seen the movies in years. I think that was one. I think you're right. I think there was one.
Was it?
So
I don't know. I just the first one to me is the classic one.
Okay. Did you watch Mighty Ducks 3?
I don't know that I watched it. I'm trying to remember what happened in it. So if I saw it, it was not memorable, and that probably means it sucked. So I'll rank that one third.
EXO. EXO there. So yeah, EXO. So EXO, Mighty Ducks 3. Is that the one where Bombay had to go pro?
I'm gonna be real honest with you. I never seen any Mighty Ducks past the first one. I only seen the first one.
He's with Rich.
That's the only one you need.
Yeah,
basically. Basically, I totally agree with you. Like, anything after that is like that. It's just like they did From Dusk Till Dawn, and then they did like 5 or 8 more. I'm like, why? You just needed one. Like, what are you doing?
Well, they did. I don't know. Was it 10 years ago? They did Slapshot 2, which was just the absolute.
That never happened.
I mean, Slapshot in and of its own is amazing, and it captures like a lot of the stuff that happened in Slapshot happened like when I was in the minors. So you go, my first thing was 15 years ago, and I remember riding the bus and watching that movie and thinking like, this is exactly like the movie. You know what I'm saying? But then they made the second one, and it was just all convoluted.
Oh man!
Like, why would you do that? Dumb and Dumber, I thought was awful.
Oh no, that was bad.
First one alone. And
Land Before Time.
Sequel,
2 through like 80.
To me, it was like Airplane and Airplane 2 were like the only, and I guess like the Naked Gun as well.
Yeah,
I think those like. Yeah, like the sequels were okay. Even a lot of people say, well, Airplane 2 sucked. They can't beat. I thought Airplane 2 was decent, but
it was decent.
Yeah, there's so much of that stuff that's just like, why did you bother? Why did you do it?
Well, don't forget, Rich.
Anchorman 2 was horrible.
Yeah, don't forget Terminator
2 was okay.
Terminator 2 was great.
It was good.
Yeah, it was great. Then somebody just sent Terminator 2, and Alien and Aliens. I guess they did. Yeah, they were both directed by more like 2 different movies. I guess you could add them to for 1 and 2 being just as good as the other or watchable. Yeah, thank you, fan James, who just sent me the trailer for Predator 2. That I don't know if anyone watched Predator 2, but don't waste your time. Predator 1 is the only one that
talking about with Danny Glover?
Yeah, Danny Glover. I don't know, Rich, if you watched Predator 2.
I actually like that one. So sue me.
I don't know that I've seen. I'm not huge on like a lot of sci-fi type stuff. So like a lot of that stuff. There's so many like these big movies in the last couple of years that I haven't seen. You could probably rattle off 10 of them, and I'd be like, no, I haven't seen it for one reason or another. Like if it ends up on HBO Now or whatever, I'll probably watch it, or Netflix. But a lot of that I missed it for one reason or another.
Well, fan question, Rich, love your commentary style. What is your favorite ice hockey movie of all time?
Slapshot, definitely Slapshot, and then Goon is really good too.
That's Sean William Scott, right?
Sean William Scott, yeah, it's really good, and it really puts. I think in a lot of ways it really kind of shines the light on fighters and fighting in hockey. I'm probably one of those people that when I kind of get into it, I was like, oh, fighting's part of the game, and I still think it is part of the game to a certain extent. But I don't think a lot of fans realize what those guys go through, the guys who do fight, and that's their job to fight. Thankfully, the NHL's getting away from that, and if you're just a fighter, you're probably not going to be in the league. But I know at the lower minor level, there's still guys that fighting's a big part of the game, and the amount of just the mental stress that they go through, and then just the physical toll that it takes on their body. When you see a guy, when you're riding the bus and you see a guy who's going to do a fight and his eye is swollen shut and he's got an ice pack on his eye, and on his right hand he's got a huge bag of ice on his hand and his knuckles are swollen probably 3 or 4 times their size, it gives you a different perspective on fighting in hockey. And it's kind of it's turned me against it for the most part. I don't think that you can get rid of it if there's a scrum in the corner and guy elbows somebody or whatever and 2 guys go at it. I think that's kind of, I think you allow that, but to see 2 guys drop the glove at center ice and square off and do that's really when guys get hurt, because you have one that's set up, right? And you have another one that's just it's a legit fight. It's like you're out somewhere and somebody knocks you in the head and you get into it with them, and then that's the end of it. But that movie Goon in particular, for a lot of different reasons, even though it kind of glorifies it. It's really, really good. But it does, to me, shines a pretty kind of a harsh light if you're willing to kind of look at it that way, of fighting in hockey.
Shout out to a fan that just sent this in my inbox. Slapshot 3, the Junior League, came out in 2008.
What? Are you serious? Good God.
I will, once he Rich, we will tag you this on Twitter. Slapshot 3, the Junior League, came out 2008. God, I don't even know who. I don't even know if there's any known actors in this. And shout out to another fan, James again said, I love you. Just for laughs and giggles, Rich, watch MVP, Most Valuable Primate. Came out in 2005. I've never heard of this movie. This is a real movie.
I've actually seen that on, like, I've seen that it's on or was on Netflix. I don't think I've actually watched it, but I remember seeing trailers for it or whatever. There's actually, there's another excellent hockey movie. It's a documentary from 2004. It's called The Chief. If you look it up, there's trailers for it on YouTube and wherever. It's a documentary of the it's a team in the it's like what do they call it? It's the Quebec Senior League. I think they call it the LNAH or something like that now. But it used to be the Quebec Senior Pro League. If you want to, it's that movie. I actually kind of know one of the guys who was one of the featured subjects of that movie. He played for a team that I worked for in Knoxville a long time ago. But it's if you want to see a good documentary and you just be shaking your head like, why do these guys do this? Excellent movie, The Chiefs. Check it out.
Yeah, just looked it up. Yeah, definitely. I got that on my list, and we'll watching that as a staff. With I know you're a big political fan as well. I know we talked about the WWE politics, the real politics of the world. On Twitter, a lot of funny pictures of Trump, of WWE Hall of Famer, orange face Donald Trump is the president. Not in the Hall of Fame as of yet, but wrestling legend Jesse Ventura, who had a stint in politics. What are your thoughts, Rich, of Trump as the president, being a WWE Hall of Famer, and then also the likes of Jesse Ventura, who did a stint in politics as well?
Ventura, I thought was interesting. I guess he's a little bit of a conspiracy nut. I think that's pretty well known. But I mean, as a governor, he was pretty effective, and he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was an independent. So I tend to lean much more Democratic, much more liberal than I do conservative. But I for the longest time I was a registered independent until this past election cycle in Florida. In order to vote in the primary, you have to be registered to a party, and I wanted to make sure that I voted for Bernie Sanders, and I did. Because I really believed in what Bernie was saying. As far as Trump goes, I'm embarrassed that this country elected this guy. I think the popular vote tells a very telling story of what's what. Yeah, he won the Electoral College, but lost the popular vote by a landslide margin. I tend to think people in this country are more centrist than they are either super right or super left, and it becomes such a touchy thing too, because you don't want to make people feel like you're talking down to them, especially when it comes to politics. But how anybody believed a word that Donald Trump said, I don't understand how any educated human being in this country with more than a high school education could actually listen to this guy talk and see the way this guy conducts himself and the way he treats people and think that he would ever be an effective leader of a country. I'm embarrassed that this guy represents me. He's the president, so I kind of have to hope that he does well, but I think he's a buffoon, and I think that our country is the laughingstock of the world in many ways at this point because of who we elected. Even George Bush has been critical of Donald Trump, and for George Bush to be, for me to say that he's the intelligent and the sane one, is saying a lot, because I didn't think Bush was an effective leader either. I really believe that it was Cheney and some of those people pulling the strings. I think Trump's promises of bringing back jobs to this country, it's a message that people wanted to hear, even though the fact that the jobs that he promised to bring back are never coming back. We're not getting steel jobs back. Coal jobs are gone. I don't understand why you wouldn't take the platform that you have, and I don't know why you would actively work against things like clean energy and green energy and alternative fuels and things like that, because at the end of the day, oil is a very finite resource. They say that we have enough to power the world for however long, but who does that help? Right? It helps the oil companies and all those things. And it's probably way more in depth than we have time or can even probably intelligently talk about. When you look at energy, that really is, when it comes to independence, we rely on oil, not only that we pump from here, but why are we in the Middle East? Why is there a war in the Middle East? It's because we're there. We're there.
Right.
Why are we there? We're there to protect we're there to protect our business interests. And that's all it is. It's empire building in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that you don't need trade with other countries and everything, but I don't understand why we don't put the efforts and the resources that we have into becoming energy independent and not having to rely on anybody else to fuel our cars or airplanes or whatever.
Right. I agree.
So when you look at a lot of the things that he's doing as well, the budget that he just came out with, can we spend more on the military? Yeah, but why not? Let's spend the money where we need it. Let's take some of that money and take care of the troops who have post-traumatic stress disorder or who are missing limbs or can't get jobs or whatever. Let's take some of that budget and take care of them and take care of health care for them and fix the VA and do things like that, as opposed to, further building up our military so we can go and invade somewhere that we need to invade at the end of the day, because of business reasons. Do we need a strong military? Of course we need a strong military, but I just find a lot of what Trump said and campaigned for and whatever, it was a bunch of bullshit, and it was a bunch of lies that, especially with the job stuff, that it's not going to change. He's not going to bring those jobs back. It's not going to happen. The healthcare thing, you can argue one way or the other that whether or not people should just get healthcare. For me, I've never understood how something such as healthcare could be a for-profit enterprise. To me, it's a utility in many ways. It's something that you just need. Same thing with, you need roads, you need a fire department, you need a police department. I think people need health insurance. And again, what do you cover with that? Is it very basic? Can you buy more if you want to? I think that, I don't know how you get there. I'm not a policy expert, right? But the idea that we can cover everybody, at least catastrophic insurance for everybody, I don't understand how hard that is to do that. And maybe I'm naive, but I really believe that that's something that we can do as a country. I don't really think that it would impact our taxes that much. I'm sure there's somebody who can give me a graph that says it will. I think that you could look at money that's misappropriated or money that's spent somewhere that could be better spent on healthcare. We could talk about this stuff all night, but that's just those are my thoughts on that stuff. And as far as the initial question, I think Trump's a fucking buffoon. So,
no problem with that. A lot of people definitely feel the same way that you do. We're going to do one word association real quick. I want to thank you, Rich Bocchini, for coming on to the show. Rich Brennan, it's always been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, Angry Mark, Emphasis Your Queen, XO, editor, Saltine, Toth, everybody that called in, support Under the Mat Radio. Don't forget, live this Tuesday, regular time, 7 p.m. Under the Mat Radio will be live with you, giving our overall account of WrestleMania 33 being there live. And, of course, giving stories. We'll be talking about the shake-up for tomorrow. Rich, go ahead, brother. Give your plug party. Let us know how to get in contact with you on social media, and on Twitter and everywhere else.
You can find me on Twitter at Rich Bocchini, RichBoccini. I'm also doing play-by-play for Fest Wrestling. They're on Twitter at Fest Wrestling, and I'll also be doing some stuff with Wrestle Circus going forward as well. So that's where you can find me. Reach out. You got any questions or whatever, love to answer them. Again, at Rich Bocchini, Bocchini.
No problem, brother. It's been an honor, Rich, to have you on the show. Hopefully we can have you come back for a part 2. And keep up the great work as always, and keep up with the funny memes and all on Twitter. We'll be contacting you soon off air. Thank you, fans, for chiming in and listening to Under the Mat Radio tonight. You're Rich, and just make sure to keep a lookout on JBL, anything that he does.
Thanks for having me on, man. Hopefully we'll do this again.
No problem, Rich. Thank you much. All right, guys, we got 30 seconds left. XO, any